The Jalen Hurts disrespect just hit brand new heights this week, as another media member claimed the Eagles QB is just another guy who can't win the big one. But hear what offensive coordinator Kellen Moore had to say when asked about his first impression of QB1 this offseason. Also, a new report is fraying that Justin Simmons to Philadelphia is still happening until you read the details. And hereby one insider thinks the Eagles got the steal of the offseason right before the team gets together for their first full OTA. I'm Thomas Mott, this is the Thomas Mott Show. Okay, so the one offseason prize that everyone in Philadelphia thought was all but guaranteed to sign with the Eagles was Broncos star safety Justin Simmons. But despite multiple reports all offseason long suggesting mutual interest and, oh, a deal is coming, free agency came and went with the Eagles signing a different safety, and then the draft came and went, and the Eagles added another hybrid safety cornerback in Cooper DeJean. Now this week, we have a brand new report from a former NFL GM saying, oh, Justin Simmons to Philadelphia is still going to go ahead and happen. Well, I mean, kind of. So here's the report that all of this news is basically based off of. Former NFL GM Randy Mueller said, I think the Philadelphia Eagles make sense as a landing spot. At this point, Simmons might have to take a short-term deal to reestablish his market for 2025, so both sides would have to get creative, but it sure makes sense. Do you notice anything about that report? Well, for one, it's not a report. Mueller says he thinks the Eagles make sense, and at this point, Simmons might need to take a short-term deal to reestablish his market for 2025. So that's not a report. That's one person basically saying, I think this should happen. I would suggest this happening. This is not the Eagles are gearing up to actually go ahead and sign this guy. Now, this guy is an ex-GM, so he carries a little bit more weight than if I just came on my show and said, hey guys, the Eagles are definitely going to go ahead and sign this person, but still, take all of this with a massive grain of salt. There's no actual reporting here. Plus, by the way, am I crazy to think the Eagles don't really need Simmons right now? I get Cindy Brown is coming off an ACL injury, although he looks pretty good in this OTA video. We have CJ Gardner-Johnson. Cooper DeJean will get a look at safety at some point during training camp. I know people aren't exactly super high on Reed Blankenship, but you gotta tell me there are a lot worse safety options in the NFL than the Eagles riding with the ghost. And I said yesterday, if you want to actually go sign somebody post-free agency, post-draft, go get a guy like Calais Campbell. It would be a veteran presence on a very young defensive line, and he still had 6.5 sacks at 37 years old for the Falcons this past season. Would you guys still want to sign Justin Simmons? I'm not against the deal. I just want to make sure we're very, very clear on the actual news and reporting here. You're going to see headlines saying the Eagles are close to signing Justin Simmons. No, they're not. This is one ex-GM who's not in the know saying, yeah, I think it would make sense if the Eagles signed Justin Simmons. Still, though, would you want him? I want to read the comments down below. Now, with the NFL schedule officially released, the Birds' next step in the entire offseason as we march towards training camp is OTA practices, which, believe it or not, are actually happening next week. May 20th, May 22nd and 23rd, the 28th, and then the 30th through the 31st are all OTA official dates where you will see not just the Eagle rookies on the football field with helmets, but the entire Eagles team as well. Now, no pads, no hitting. This is not, an actual 11-on-11 full contact sort of thing. It is just an offseason training activity, but it is the first time we will have actual practices involving the entire, literally everybody on the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles roster. And one of those players that I've personally forgotten about, but I'm very excited to see in an Eagles helmet is linebacker Devin White, who, next to Jeremiah Trotter and Nakobe Dean, could make for a better Eagles linebacker core than we've seen in recent years. However, NFL insider Bucky Brooks, he talked on the Moving the Sticks podcast about how this might be, Devin White at least, the most underrated signing in all of the NFL offseason when he said, quote, most underrated signing on their defense is Devin White. Yeah, no one ever talked about Devin White. I don't know if we've forgotten, but this dude 2 years ago, we talked about him being one of the best at his position. All these big moves the Eagles made kind of overshadowed the linebacker signing, and I know there are a lot of people in the comment section that'll say he hasn't been good for 2 seasons, but you gotta remember, he's still under the age of 28, and he's 2 seasons removed from being considered maybe the best linebacker talent in the NFL. The talent is still there. Can the Eagles defense and Vic Fangio get the most out of him? That remains to be seen. Either way, I think he's definitely the lead candidate for the best steal of the NFL offseason because he's so darn cheap. And if you get kind of the 2021-2020 performance of Devin White on this Eagles defense, it's going to be even better than any of us could have actually imagined. Now, for some reason, no one wants to go ahead and claim the 50,000 jersey giveaway because Justin Perry Reed 6359 didn't email me yesterday. Justin, send me an email, all down below in the description box, exactly what you need to do. That way I can get your jersey sent out to you as soon as possible. If I don't hear from you by Monday, then I'm going to pick a brand new winner, so be sure to be subscribed in case I got to pick somebody else. Now, while OTAs are going on next week, the NFL Spring League meetings and Coach Accelerator program will also be happening in Nashville during the same time. And according to Zach Berman yesterday, Eagles special teams teams coordinator Michael Clay will participate in the NFL's Coach Accelerator program at the spring meetings next week. Now, Clay is entering his 4th season overseeing the Eagles special teams and really coming off his best year yet. This will give him even more exposure to decision makers and allow him to possibly be a head coaching candidate or an offensive coordinator candidate down in the future. Now, Clay was hired as the Eagles special teams coordinator in 2021, and at the time, I didn't even realize this, he was the youngest coordinator in the NFL at 29. Fast forward to this past year, and Philadelphia was number 1 in DVOA on special teams and number 1 in punt return yards, which resulted in a contract extension for Clay this past offseason. Philadelphia has always been kind of a coaching tree destination for all these young, hot, up-and-coming coordinators who go ahead and do well for Philadelphia and then get a head coaching job somewhere down the line. Clay is probably still maybe 1 to 3 years away from getting an actual head coaching job. He needs to be a special teams coordinator, moved on to offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator first, but still, you can see the coaching tree continue to go ahead and churn here, and it seems very, very likely that Clay is being groomed to be maybe a future head coach in the NFL. Now, Jalen Hurts has stayed pretty quiet this offseason, as one would expect. He's not really one for the spotlight. He's been working out on his own. He's working out with a facility. He's been doing what QB1 really should be doing, minus just being in the national spotlight, because again, he hates that sort of thing. That doesn't stop the media rats, though, from coming out of the woodworks and stirring up controversy yet again, surrounding the Eagles leader, with noted hater Emmanuel Acho saying on Speak this week that, quote, Hurts is not an elite quarterback. Jalen Hurts is good enough to get you there. He's not good enough to win it. Now, at first, that take is just really dumb, and I really shouldn't even bother to touch it, but I guess Acho has already forgotten that not only did Jalen Hurts get the Eagles to a Super Bowl 2 years ago, he outplayed the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes, and to the point that Jonathan Gannon had to blow the game. It wasn't Hurts that lost Super Bowl 57. Still, though, this created a whole media firestorm this week, and a bunch of other media members were asked about Hurts' ability to be elite in 2024, including ESPN's Adam Schefter on The Fanatic yesterday, voicing his concerns for QB1.
With him, it's a case where 2 years ago, we're talking about him being one of the faces of the league, one of the guys that has completely turned around this franchise. And then a year later, everybody's trying to figure out what went wrong. So what is the truth with Jalen Hurts? Is he a superstar worthy of the contract that they gave him? Or is he a question mark the way that some people had last year? And right now, the only person who's going to be able to answer that is Jalen Hurts with his play this year. If Jalen Hurts comes out and plays great again, there are no worries. All set. All systems go. But if he comes out and is up and down and inconsistent, doesn't play well, which I don't expect, but if he has one of those kinds of seasons again, now we're going to start to be in a conversation of who's playing quarterback long term. Right? I mean, you can't have 2 years in a row like the type he had last year and think that everything's going to be okay and that, boy, we're set at that position.
Now, I think Schefter made some good points. He's kind of a little wishy-washy there. He's not officially saying Jalen Hurts is no good, but he's also not saying Jalen Hurts is the best. Still, though, it's just incredible to me that this continues to be a topic of discussion, year 4, moving into year 5 of Jalen Hurts. I mean, do we forget that Jalen Hurts had more passing yards this past season and more passing touchdowns in 2023 than he did during the magical MVP Super Bowl run of 2022? This whole narrative that he was not good this past season basically stems from his 1 percentage point drop in completion percentage, yes, 1, and of course the 15 interceptions, which were definitely a major problem. But still, who in their right mind thinks that Jalen Hurts is just some average, outside the top 10 quarterback based on last season when clearly coaching and the overall offensive scheme was a bigger issue than, say, a quarterback throwing a couple more interceptions? It just goes to show that national media personalities like Emmanuel Acho didn't watch enough of the Eagles to actually make a fair assumption on Jalen Hurts this past season. All of us who actually watched the Eagles understood it was a coaching issue. All of us understood the vanilla play calling, the lack of motion, the calling runs when you should be passing, and vice versa were all the major factors in the Eagles' offense being absolutely anemic at times, and yet still, he had better numbers this past season than he did with Shane Steichen in 2022. I think ESPN anchor and noted Eagles superfan Kevin Nagandi had a much more realistic take on the whole situation on The Fanatic this morning.
The biggest storyline, I think, all season will be Jalen Hurts. Who shows up? Do we have Jalen Hurts from 2022 under Shane Steichen? Do we have Jalen Hurts from 2023 under Nick Sirianni? And the second thing is, does this team play for the head coach?
Yep.
Because they did not play for the head coach the final 2 months. And the head coach remained, but now he's the CEO, and everything was taken away from him, specifically on the offensive side. What kind of offense are we going to get with Kellen Moore, Vic Fangio with this defense? And it's the first time we get to see both sides, and we don't have that home field advantage against a very, very good Packers team.
He's right. Like, bringing in Kellen Moore has got to be the biggest change of the entire offseason that wasn't actually signing a player. And the real one that should get Hurts back into the elite category, at least for all the doubters like Acho that remain out there. Someone who actually understands motion, who understands matchups, who understands putting his quarterback in the best position to succeed and be successful is something Philadelphia has not had, at least since Shane Steichen left. Oh, and Moore said himself just a couple of days ago that so far his first impressions of Jalen Hurts have been pretty darn good.
Your first impressions of Jalen and how it's unique to guys like Dak and Justin Simmons?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Jalen's process. So far, I think really it's focused on how he processes the game and just kind of the classroom aspect of it, and we're beginning the field process of really getting out on the field and being able to do this thing. But I've really enjoyed our conversations. I think he's a really smart player. He has a great feel for this game. The more conversation we have, the more we get to make these adjustments and build off of this thing. But Jalen's one of the premier quarterbacks in this league for a reason, and you see it, on film previously, but obviously getting on the field now, you're certainly seeing it.
Pair all of this with a brand new weapon in Saquon Barkley, who I know we're excited about, but I don't think we fully understand the impact he can have on creating one-on-one opportunities on the outside, giving Jalen Hurts a little bit of a break in terms of having to be the do-it-all sort of guy in this offense. This is going to be an incredible offensive year, and I can't wait to see Jalen Hurts prove all of the doubters wrong, especially Emmanuel Acho after that terrible, terrible take. Now, just like with Justin Simmons a couple of minutes ago, let's be honest, it's the NFL offseason, and these national media personalities, these national TV sports shows don't have football to talk about. They got to make up controversies and make up ways for you to go ahead and tune in to see what they're going to go ahead and say because they need to make money. And so, this is probably not the only crazy offseason take we're going to have on Jalen Hurts. It's just the first one of what's probably going to go ahead and be many, which is why you should subscribe to shows like this, because we're just reporting the news instead of trying to generate a bunch of BS topics. That way you click on the video. We got plenty more stuff happening the next couple of days and weeks, including next week, OTAs. It's going to be so fun covering what is really the first Eagles practice of 2024 with everybody involved. Cannot wait for that. Be sure to subscribe. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.